Hi, I'm Mike from 1A Auto. We've been selling auto parts for over 30 years.
What's up guys, I'm Andy from 1A Auto. In this video I'm going to show you how to replace the spark plugs in this 2011 Ford Explorer. If you need parts for your vehicle, click the link in the description and head over to 1aauto.com. I'm going to use a 10mm socket and a ratchet. We're going to disconnect the negative posts on the battery, the negative terminal. Once it's loose, wiggle it back and forth, slide it off, set it aside. The air filter box is right here. I'm going to disconnect this mass airflow sensor. There's a little button underneath here that unlocks it. Just push that button, release the lock. There's a wire that's connected right here to the box. You can pull up on this right there, or you can use a little screwdriver and get underneath there to pry it up. We're going to loosen up this worm clamp right here. Use a straight blade screwdriver. We're going to slide this snorkel back a little bit. And there's a hook right here, a latch, and then one right here. Those two. Then I'll slide this up. So I'll set this air box aside. I'm going to take the filler cap off right here. Loosen it to the left. This foam piece comes up here. We're going to go around this cover right here. Pull this up like that. There is a little retainer over here. I'm going to loosen this up. Pull that up. And then there's, over here, there's a little push pin. You use a trim tool. Pull this off. Pull that pin out. And we'll pull this cover off and set it aside. All right, I'm going to take this tube off right here. Just push this little lock and slide this out. And then you can slide it out over here. Take that off. Take my straight head screwdriver, loosen up this worm clamp back here. Pull this off. And disconnect this hose right here. Set this aside. Now I'm going to disconnect these electrical connectors for the coils. I'm going to take my straight head screwdriver, slide this lock up like that, and then push down on the retainer and slide it out. I'm going to do the same for the other ones. Now I'm going to take the coil out. I'm going to use an 8mm socket, extension, and a ratchet. Take this bolt out. Pull that bolt out, and I can grab the coil, slide it straight up. Now I'm going to take these spark plugs out with a 5/8 spark plug socket. This is actually a 6-inch deep spark plug socket. It's got a magnet in there. It is a 12-point, although we only have a 6-point spark plug. It'll still work. We actually sell these at 1aauto.com. Then I'll use an extension. And a ratchet. And pull out the old plug. You want to make sure when you get the new plugs that you match them up with the old plugs. Make sure the threads are the same, which in these plugs they are the same. And then we'll just check the gap. If you look at the real close to the gap on the old plug, there's a large gap right there, so it's a good time for us to do this job. Stick the plug back in the spark plug socket. Gently slide it down the tube. Gently start twisting it in. Use my socket to start tightening it, and I'm going to torque it. Now I'm going to use a torque wrench, and I'm going to torque these to 11 foot-pounds. And I'm going to do the same for the other ones. Right, I'm going to install the coils. Slide it down. We're going to take the 8mm bolt. Get that started. Make sure it's all the way down. We'll take a 8mm socket, extension and ratchet. Just gonna snug this down, and then I'm gonna torque it. Now I'm gonna use a torque wrench and torque this to 62 inch-pounds. Make sure you're on inch-pounds and not foot-pounds. That's good. I'll do the same for the other ones. With those all torqued down, now we can reconnect the electrical connectors. Just slide this on, clip it in place, and then push down on the lock. We'll do the same for the other ones. All right, we'll disconnect this connector here. This goes to the evap system. This is part of the purge. Push down on this connector, pull it off. And the throttle body connector right here. I'm going to use a pick first to pull up on this lock. Pull that up. Push down on the lock. And pull the connector out. Locks right there. To release it. And we want to disconnect this vacuum line right here. It's a little lock, this little green lock right here. I'll just take a pick, go on the back side of this. Try to slide this out. Sometimes it's a little bit tricky. Just gonna push down on these little tabs, slide that out, and slide the vacuum line off. Just like that. So these little tabs, I just pushed them down. Push down on that one. And I'm going to hold it. Push down on the other one. And slide out about halfway. Now I'm going to remove this from this bracket right here. And also right here. Just pull this out of the way. Set that aside. And there's a coolant hose that goes over here. I'll just take this out of this bracket. Pull that aside as well. Now I'm going to use some hose clamp pliers. You can also use some needle nose pliers. Take this hose clamp off, slide that aside. I'll take some pick tools, try to get under this hose a little bit. Just go around there a little bit, and then I can twist it off. Slide that off and out of the way. And I'll do the same over here. Take these hose clamp pliers. Slide the clamp down. take the pick tools. Try to slide this hose off, just like that. I'm going to take this throttle body off. I'm going to take these 4 8mm bolts off. Use an 8mm socket, extension, and a ratchet. I'm just going to grab the throttle body and pull it straight forward. You can pull those bolts out so you don't lose them. Pull the throttle body out. Be careful with this. All the electronics in here are very sensitive. You don't want to drop this. So just place it aside in a safe place. All right, this wire is secured down by this little bracket, and I'm gonna use a little trim tool. Just pry up on this, a little push pin. Slide that aside. If this coolant hose is in your way, you can take that off, but I'd rather not have to deal with adding coolant or bleeding the system after, so I'm going to leave that connected. Just work around it. Then there's these 8mm bolts for the intake. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bolts that I'm going to remove. I'll just use an 8mm socket, an extension, and a ratchet. The bolts are caged, so they won't come out. So just keep that in mind. Ooh, this one's on there pretty tight. This bolt comes out, or it looks like it was probably supposed to stay in there, but it came out. There's a bracket right under here that is holding the intake on the back side. So I'm going to use an 8mm socket, take this bolt out. Right there. With that bolt out, we can grab the intake. It might be a little bit tough to pull off at first. Slide it out of our way. All right, with the intake off, you want to make sure that you cover up these intake ports. You don't want to drop anything down those ports, or you're going to end up causing severe engine damage. So you can put rags in there. You just want to make sure when you're done, don't forget to take the rags out. So I leave them hanging out a little bit. So those rags are in there, and we're okay to work on the back side of the engine. All right, we're going to pull these locks up, these little red tabs. Just grab a pick, just pull them up. You could probably grab them with your finger, but it's easier to use with a pick or a small screwdriver. And then release the lock, just push down on the lock. And pull the connector out, just push down there. Do that with the other two. Now I'm going to take a 8mm socket and a ratchet, and we'll take these bolts out. Take that bolt out. We can grab the coil and twist it back and forth a little bit. It's on there pretty good. Just gonna use my trim tool and pry up on it a little bit. Carefully. there we go. There's the coil. Spark plug socket, the 5/8 spark plug socket, an extension, and a ratchet. And I'll pull these plugs out one at a time. Alright, it's loose. You can slide this out. Pull the spark plug out with the socket. There's the old plug. These plugs normally come pre-gapped. It's always a good idea to check them. The gap you want is about 50 thousandths, which is exactly where these plugs are. So we're good to install these plugs now. I'll take the new spark plug, just insert it in the socket. Make sure it stays in there good. I'll slide it down the spark plug tube. You want to be careful not to drop it. And gently twist it in. I'll take my ratchet, just snug it up a little bit. I'll take my torque wrench and just torque this to 11 foot-pounds. Good. And I'll do the same with the other two. I'll take the new coil pack, just slide it on, push it all the way down. Take the 8mm bolt, get that started. We use a torque wrench and we're going to torque this to 62 inch-pounds. Make sure you're on inch-pounds, not foot-pounds. That's good. We'll do the same with the other three. Now we're going to reconnect the electrical connectors. Just slide it in, lock it in place, and then push down on the locks. Do the same with the other ones. We're going to remove these rags from the intake tubes. Pull them out. Just wipe down this manifold. Just make sure you don't get any dirt inside the tubes. That's good. So good. We'll take this intake, slide it into position, lift up on the wiring harness so it's out of the way. There is some pins in the bottom of the intake. You have to line up with some holes. Those are lined up. Make sure that bracket's lined up in the back there. Just gonna start one of these bolts. All right. Now I'll take this 8mm bolt, install it into this bracket, it holds the intake on. Before I tighten that down, I just want to make sure I get all these bolts started. Just get them started by hand. Install this long one right here. Going to take a 8mm socket, extension and ratchet, and snug these up. We're going to torque these upper intake manifold bolts in a specific torque sequence to 89 foot-pounds. I'm sorry, 89 inch-pounds. And this is number 1. This one's number 2. Number 3. Number 4. Then number 5 is over here. Number 6. And number 7. Then once we torque those all to 89 inch-pounds, we're going to torque them an additional 45 degrees. So it's kind of hard to get a torque indicator on these bolts, so I'm just going to eyeball it. 45 degrees would be about half a 90, so if you're looking at going to a right angle, about halfway to there. So 45 degrees. We're going to do it in the same sequence we just did it when torquing them. Good to go. Now I'm going to tighten this support bolt. Snug that up first. And then I can torque it to 89 inch-pounds. Then we can install this vacuum line in the back, this vacuum hose. Slide this on first. Use some hose clamp pliers. Squeeze this down. Oops. Push it down there. Now we have a hose over here. Slide this into position. Slide that on there. Use the hose clamp pliers. And that's good there. I'm going to secure this hose into this bracket here, the coolant hose, and slide this evap hose over, and slide this into the brackets. And we'll lock this down. We have a connector right here. Slide that connector on there, lock it in place. Just gonna clean the surface on this throttle body. And then clean over near the gasket. It's a good idea to replace this gasket when you take the throttle body off. Take the throttle body, put it in position. Take the bolts. Get these started. We're going to tighten down these bolts. Try to do it evenly. Go back and forth. And I'll tighten this down to 89 inch-pounds. Connect the connector for the throttle body, lock it in place, and then push down on the lock. Now I'm going to reinstall this tube right here, lock it in place. At this point, I can put this engine cover back on. I got to take this cap off first. And this is going to slide over here like that. Secure this cover down right here. Just twist that down. The other side just had a push retainer, so we'll just push that down. Just like that. The other side just had a push retainer, so we'll just push that down. Like that. I'm going to reinstall this snorkel. Slide this into position. Slide this hose on right here. And then this hose goes right here. Lock it in place. Take a screwdriver, straight blade screwdriver, tighten up this worm clamp. Just snug, make sure the snorkel's on there good. Slide this down, slide the box down. I'm gonna install these clips over here. Lock it in place, and same with the other one. Lock it in place. Take this connector, slide it on the mass airflow, and then this retainer that holds the wire down. Push that down there. I'll take a straight blade screwdriver, just tighten down this worm clamp. Make sure it's snug. Reinstall this oil filter cap. Reconnect the battery negative cable. Take my 10mm socket and a ratchet. Just gonna snug this up. Make sure it's nice and tight. Not too tight though, you don't want to break the clamp. And it's good and tight.
Thanks for watching. Visit us at 1AAuto.com for quality auto parts, fast and free shipping, and the best customer service in the industry.